In the session today, we will be talking about the academic integrity and your role in that landscape at UQ. We're also talking about the two important functionality in Turnitin, the similarity report and the AI indicator. And finally, we will be talking about the responsibility as the marker, because we expect that you will be doing the marking in your course. This is a word cloud question. Before we talk about academic integrity, can you please share what does academic integrity means to you? And please use from 1 to 6 words in your answer. Yeah, giving credit to the original author. Sorry that this question doesn't display the whole answers, but yeah, I understand what you mean. Honesty, ethical conduct, avoid plagiarism, originality. Yeah, honest, principled, stick to the rubric. Yeah, you can share your explanation if you wish, but yeah, great answers. Honesty, integrity in academic conduct. Yeah. Now, I would like now to introduce Peter to talk about the academic integrity at UQ.
Great, thanks, Hong. And I'll just point out in those responses you gave, there were no wrong answers. All of you were able to touch on what we're talking about. We might just jump to the next slide. Thanks, Hong. Okay, so we have a definition that we use for academic integrity. It's the same one that's been developed across Universities Australia back in 2017. You can see it there on the screen. Simply, we look at academic integrity as integral to professional integrity for students as graduate and go on to their professional lives. And it also weighs heavily into their own personal integrity. So a person who acts with integrity is most likely to in all three situations. And part of our role is to encourage that academic integrity is maintained throughout the student's progression through the years of study. Thank you, Hong. Okay, now part of your role will be to demonstrate academic integrity and also to look for evidence of misconduct, and we'll have a look at that towards the end of the session. But these are the current challenges that universities throughout Australia and probably throughout the world are facing. Look, unintentional or minor in academic integrity breaches, generally, if somebody's made a mistake, they're cautioned and spoken to about how they might improve their situation in the future. The other ones that you can see there, like plagiarism, collusion, data fabrication, are all things that have been going on for donkey's years. And whilst we're mostly on top of them, they can still occur. There's a couple of new ones there that you may not be familiar with. Contract cheating. Briefly, that's where students pay somebody else or have somebody else complete their assignment and hand it in as if it's their own, whether it's be a family member, a friend, or going through a commercial site on the web. File sharing we'll get to a little bit later. I'm going to ask you what you know about that. The other thing that's popped up most recently since early last year was generative AI, and we'll explain a little bit about the processes that UQ has adopted for generative AI so that you can get a fair idea of what your students could and should be engaged in. All right, I think that's it for that one. Thank you. Oh, the other one, of course, thank you, Hong, that neatly placed cursor. Medical certificate, you can get them off the web. You should get an authorized doctor to indicate if there's an illness, and as tutors and course coordinators, that's what's expected rather than something that's been falsified. And it'll simply be counted as cheating and students will be punished for it, or they'll face consequences for it. Okay, question is, why do you think students cheat? What sort of situations might they be in where cheating is a good option for them? Poor time management can be it. Pressure, procrastination, yes, that comes down with the poor time management. Stressed and didn't understand a topic, yep, I can agree with that one. So these are some of the reasons that have been identified through research why students cheat. Firstly, you've got the individual ones, and some of them were pointed out during responses in the last slide. Family expectations. If people are expecting that their children will do well, it puts additional pressure on them. They want to excel. They may have a high level of stress. They may be in a course where they're not ideally suited to, and they're struggling to compete with the other students. Lack of preparation, we saw that with the time management. Another one that does come up at times through research is a lack of linguistic proficiency. So if a student is struggling with the language that they're learning in, then they're more vulnerable to acting in with a lack of integrity. The contextual reasons that we look at for this are expectations from the society. You know, we want our students to do well if they're in that highly competitive environment. Peer attitudes and behavior, somebody said peer pressure before, but there's also other ones, like if they see themselves in a situation where there's lots of opportunities to cheat, if there's no matching software used or some assessment tasks are used over and over from one semester to the next, then students are also more likely to cheat. The other one that's really interesting that comes up is when they're dissatisfied with the teaching and learning environment. And so if they feel then their lecturer is not pulling their weight, not doing a good job, then they're not valuing the situation they're in, and then they're more likely to cheat as well. Interesting thing, when a study was done about contract cheating, a lot of students who don't cheat were not concerned about the students who do cheat. Now, it's suspected that they didn't understand what was going on as much as they may have, but they didn't think it was a serious breach of academic integrity. And I guess coming through high school, students might have had their parents helping them complete assignment tasks. So that might lead into it as well, because certainly, you know, a student who gets a friend or a family member to complete an assignment, that is actually contract cheating. It doesn't have to be through the commercial side. One other one I'd like you to point out to you is that ambiguous grey area of situational ethics. That's where you might be a person who's just not interested in acting with a lack of integrity, but something happens in the moment that might cause you to tip over the edge a little bit. You know, your grandmother died the week before, and that upset all of your preparation for your study. And you might make that decision that if it wasn't for that situation, I wouldn't be doing this, but I'm in this situation now and I want to get through to the end of the semester. So that's what we talk about, the grey area of situational ethics. I see you're responding in the chat there. I'll have a look at it in a moment. Thank you. We can just jump to the next slide, please.
Can I ask a question here?
Absolutely.
It's just a quick question about a student, and then he just recycled the same article for one course to all the other 3 courses. So not exactly, just some minor changes, but the same article. So how can I interpret this? Can I just interpret that the reason for cheating is pretty much like lazy?
Sorry, that's Hyan, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a tutor at present?
Say it again?
You're a tutor?
Yeah.
Okay, so your responsibility would be there, if you know that it's occurred, then you would have to advise your course coordinator, and the course coordinator would look into it and take it to the integrity officer. And we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that.
But we just talk about the reason for cheating. So for this kind of situation, the reason could be just that the student is very lazy. Can I interpret it like that?
You may well. It could be that they're lazy. You know, whilst we talk about situational ethics and family pressures and different contextual reasons, some people are inclined to cheat. And if they're doing that, then we need to catch them and you know, then they'll go through the process of a misconduct. I'm going to say trial, but you know, they go through the process with the integrity officer, and then decisions are made by the decision maker about what sort of punishment they should receive.
Okay.
So we will talk about that, and you'll probably have the opportunity to bring up a question like that as well again. and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along. But I will point out what the role of the tutor is in all this so that it's clear to you what you can and can't do. I spoke earlier about artificial intelligence has come in, threw everybody into a big loop last year. You should have seen the pressure on lecturers at that time. We scrambled, as did all universities across the world, I'm sure, to determine what might be done. UQ came up with a policy, and it's to do with assessment. And what we decided was that there were going to be 3 situations, and you need to be aware of the situation that's been set up by your course coordinators. So course coordinators had the choice of determining what level of AI would be used in their assessment pieces. And most of them went for option 1. Now, option 1 is we prohibit the use of AI and also machine translation. Machine translation's only just recently been included. Previously was a course coordinator would commonly decide that AI wasn't to be used in their assessment tasks. There's a second option, in-person assessment that does not permit use of AI and MT. So, if you were face-to-face with a student, you wouldn't be using it. But then there's a third choice, which some lecturers opted for, which is having more complex or authentic assessment where students are encouraged to use AI and MT to support their learning. Now, as a tutor in your role, it should be in the ECP, but just check with your course coordinator what the rules are, because, AI is new. We're using tools like ChatGPT. Students commonly do it, but they shouldn't be necessarily doing it for their assessment task. There's grey areas like punching in a question to begin with to get a bit of an idea of where you might be headed with it. That might be okay in some situations. So it's important that the course coordinator and you and your fellow tutors talk about it and see what is and isn't acceptable. Having said that, there'll be ways that you can determine it, and we'll have a look at that later as well. If you're unsure, just clarify it. Yep. For you, if you're continuing to study, and advice that you might pass on to your students about the use of AI, don't put any sensitive or private information in there. Make sure anything that's provided from an AI tool like a ChatGPT or any of the others is accurate. It's getting better, but originally it was just pumping out information that was nonsense, and it was putting false references in there. And so there were issues. If it's used, it must be acknowledged, so it's referenced, then where you got it from and when you got it. And the other one is check with your course coordinators. And, having said that, AI has come a long way since November of the year before, but when we were faced with it in January. And so more and more tools are using elements of ChatGPT, of artificial intelligence. So whereas a tool like Grammarly is acceptable, Grammarly now has an AI function in it which blurs the lines again. So good idea to have a good talk to your students about it. And I think, Huang, are you going to mention the issue of Grammarly with Turnitin?
No. So
No?
yeah, feel free
All
to
right.
include. Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right, we'll jump to the next one, please, Hong. I'm conscious of the time here. Okay, so contract cheating, I explained it a little bit before. It's when a third party is used to produce an assignment or an assessment task, and it's submitted, whether it's commercial contract cheating services or a student or a staff member. It's serious, and the students have been caught for it, and they've been given penalties for it. So just be conscious of that. We have some strategies that can help you identify assignments that might have been done through contract cheating when you're marking, and those resources are on the Italy website, but I'll also mention a few of them this morning as well. We'll go jump to the next one, please. Oh, sorry. I remember now what I said. File sharing sites. Is anybody familiar with them? Have you come across them? Katty's shaking her head. Casey, what about you? Familiar with it? Good, good. Gives me something to talk about.
I'm not familiar. Never heard anything about this.
No? Okay, thank you, Hein. A file sharing site. It's a site where students can upload content and download other content. So in some instances, you would load course material or a completed assignment, and the file sharing site will give you credits so you can download other content. The biggest issue is that students are putting up things there, and then students are downloading them and submitting them as their own work. File sharing sites are a bit, it's like AI. There's really good things about it, but it can be dodgy for students and they can fall into a trap. So they might get help for their homework, or they might get content that would enable them to be a better student and to learn more, but they may also accidentally bring down things that would contribute to their assessment, and then they can get pulled up for it. So these things like Chegg and Course Hero, they target students. And the other thing with it, I should have mentioned, with the increase in the use of AI, those contract cheating firms are really targeting students. And they've got all the students' information, and they can blackmail students, and they have done. And, they can hold that over their heads for the next 30 years while students go into their careers. They can go back and say, well, listen, we've provided an assignment for this person. And, simply, we want students to do their own work to learn, so that we know that when they graduate, they've met graduate attributes and they're competent in their courses. Nobody wants an engineer designing a bridge that was written by, all the tasks were written by somebody in Nigeria. So we need to make sure that students are acting with integrity to allow them to get through. These file sharing sites, these are the ones you might look at if you want to do, just do a Google search, see what they offer. We'll go on to the next one, and I'll just have a look at some of the main things that concern us about file sharing sites. Avoid uploading. So any assessments, exams, essays, don't put them up. Students should not be putting them up there, because other people can use them to cheat. And if somebody else cheats using your paper, you're equally responsible. The other issue is students have been putting up course materials that belong to their lecturers. And this is a real issue because it's a breach of copyright and the intellectual property of the lecturer. And, when students download that stuff, it could be a year later or 2 years later, and the course may have changed. But we've recently identified a way that lecturers can apply to the companies to get their information taken down from there, at least with one of the companies. Students should also be advised, and this is what you should be passing on to your students: don't download work completed by others and submit it as part of your own work. And, any of those things like answers for quizzes or tests, they really should be doing their own work. If it's found that they've done engaged in file sharing, then they will be face consequences if they're caught. Great. Just a week or two ago, we introduced a student academic honour code. It's been in the pipeline since 2019, 2020. It was developed in conjunction with students and the academic board, and it was then placed in the hands of students to make any adjustments. So it is supported by students. They did a survey, and I don't know the figure, it's something like in excess of 90% of the students that responded thought a student academic honour code was a good idea. So at least we had the support of the students who have gone before the current crop, but it's something that you can use in class just to help remind students that, they're here to learn, and they're here to learn with integrity. It's probably a good idea for it to be shared at the beginning of the semester, and also at any times when you're introducing assessment tasks. Just on that note, in the Italy resources, we've got a set of discussion slides on academic integrity, and there's notes to accompany them, and that's for the course coordinator to use, but you might also find it valuable for use in your class, because really we want you talking about academic integrity as part of your everyday role. And I think I'm going to finish up there, Hong, and then you're going to go on to turn it in. So just briefly, is there any questions about that? I know it was quick, but you'll be able to watch the rerun on the recording if you need to.
Yeah, I think Hyan make a good suggestion that share her practice that she asked the student to read it aloud together. So I think by reading that, it can be another way to inculcate the honor code in the student practice. Yeah.
Okay, could I briefly respond to Noah?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I wasn't targeting a country like Nigeria. I hope it didn't come across that way, but some of the evidence has suggested that a lot of the papers that were being developed were, the advertising on the sites doesn't equal the reality. And, might be people claiming to have PhDs and masters, but often some of them haven't even completed high school. And Nigeria was one of the countries where a number of these were sourced to, and also in Eastern Europe as well. So I'm sorry if I offended you. I didn't mean to, but there is evidence to suggest that it has come from there. Okay, thank you, Hong.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I think this one is still your part.
Oh, sorry. I sort of covered this. Work with students, develop strong relations with them so that you know them and you're familiar with the work that they're capable of doing. In your own work, model academic integrity so that students are familiar with it. And, if you're going to use a set of slides and use images on there, make sure that you accredit them appropriately. Talk to students and act with integrity, and make sure you talk about why it's so important. And that's where you might find those slides valuable as well. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end, we will be sharing the slide as well. So if you wanted to use the slide in your teaching, then feel free.
Sorry, I haven't got the run sheet in front of me. Part of your role as a tutor will be as a marker. And, what we identified is the best way of identifying students that have cheated is by actively looking for it. So when you are marking, could I just impress upon you that it is important to look for it? And if you do identify it, your role is simply to pass on any of your suspicions. You don't have to have 100% certainty, but if there's something about it that's made you suspicious, you should inform the course coordinator. Under no circumstances should you speak with a student about it or challenge them on it. That's not your role. That will go further up the chain.
Sorry, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Just very briefly, because my course coordinator, he's just really very busy, and there is a student really with some suspicion. So he said, because I was just marking the student, and then he said, if you have some time, feel free to just catch up with the student for several minutes. So it was all right that I just arrange face-to-face talk with the student to clarify things up.
Sorry, what was the issue? You were talking to the student about what?
Okay, so the issue is that when I was marking and I spotted some kind of suspicious signs, so I reported to the course coordinator because the coordinator, however, was very busy, was very occupied with quite a lot of other things. So he said, if you want, you can also catch up with the student to have a face-to-face discussion to clarify the situation. So I did. So is this okay? Or actually I should leave face-to-face discussion only to the course coordinator?
If you were suspicious of what you were reading and you thought there was an issue with it, then you should simply pass it on to the course coordinator. Pass your suspicions on to them. Okay, if they'd written something and just wanted to clarify what they meant, that's one thing talking to them. But if you're suspicious and you think they might have engaged in something that they shouldn't have, then that's when you pass it to the course coordinator.
Yeah, but the course coordinator asked me to have a talk with the student. Is this all right?
Well, that's up to the course coordinator to decide that. Ideally, they should be doing it themselves. So, we've identified a process that everybody should work through, and ideally, if people can follow that process, things will go a lot smoother. So, perhaps if the issue comes up again, you could just suggest that we've got a process in place for course coordinators to talk about suspicious behaviour.
Okay, thank you.
You'd be familiar too that we've got the academic integrity modules that were introduced and made mandatory for students. If you haven't had a look at them, by all means you should. But we've also got staff academic integrity modules as well, which will give you a bit of an idea about the messaging that goes towards students, but it might just also help support your own learning and understanding what are the priorities for teaching staff at UQ. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to pass it over to Hong, just in case. Yep. Okay. We've got an increasing number of students at UQ and throughout other universities with a disability. And that's increased since about 2019, when there's been a change of how students have been categorised as having or not having a disability. Now, I am not saying that these people are more likely to cheat or engage in misconduct, but it's probably one of a group of students who may feel more vulnerable. They may be under more pressure, and they might find the time constraints impacting upon their health. And so what we would ask you to do, if you recognise that students in your classroom are struggling, and it could be from a medical condition, we'll just jump to the next one, Huang. Students have opportunities to go to a student advisor and seek a SAP, which is a student access plan. And the student access plan will develop a form of communication between the student and the course coordinator. And what it enables them to do is determine what sort of accommodations can be made with students that have medical conditions or medical disabilities. And so, and it's open to a few other categories as well. But those accommodations can be made, and that can ease the pressure on those students so that they can more successfully complete their studies. So if you recognise the students struggling, maybe you can just have a chat to them about seeking a SAP. And, there's also adjustments put in place for exams as well. Yes?
Peter, can I see the percentage again?
Yep. Oh, sorry, can you see the percentage again?
Yeah, I wanted just to see the percentage, so I'll just be aware of the situation.
Yeah, so it's over 10%. So if you've got a class of 33 of the students in your class are going to most likely to have some kind of condition that might affect their studying.
Right, okay.
And, the huge growth has been largely, or has been contributed to by mental health issues.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you, Hong. I think that's your turn now.
Yeah, so this is the question, but I will press on. So you can see that there's a few things that you can do to educate the student about academic integrity. And it is best if you can reiterate that throughout the semester, not just at the start of the semester. And one of the ways that the teacher can do to model the academic integrity for students. So you can see the 4 options here. And one of the ways is that we include appropriate citations in all of the teaching materials. So we model the good practice, and the student will be able to, hopefully they will look up at the model and follow the good practice in their submissions. So now I'm going to talk about Turnitin and the 2 functionalities that can help with improving the academic integrity. So in your course, if you use Turnitin submissions, you will be able to use these 2 functionalities. As you might have known, Turnitin is a web-based submissions and feedback tool. So if your course uses Turnitin submission, student submissions will be matched with the large database in Turnitin. And also there's an AI indication tool so that you can see potentially if students have used generative AI to compose their assignment. So when the students submit their work into Turnitin, their work will be matched with the large database in turn it in. So if the student acknowledge the sources that they have used, that is a good practice. If they do not acknowledge the source but try to paraphrase the source and use as their own knowledge, that will be plagiarism. So if you can look at the text matching and then identify whether the student have a good practice or they just plagiarize their text. So I will go into more details into how can you check the submissions link. So let me share my other screen here to show you some of the practical tips. So this is a sample assessment that I have, the literature review submission link, the Turnitin. So if you click onto this link, it will bring you to the assessment in Turnitin. And the first thing you see is the assignment inbox. If you want to check the setting, you find the clock or the wheel button. Click onto that and you will see other details in the assessment. As the tutor, you can check the setting, providing that you do not change anything without communicating with the course coordinator. So submit paper to standard paper repository will have matching the text in student submission to the Turnitin database. And then going down here, some courses might choose to exclude the bibliographic material and quoted material, but our recommendation is that do not exclude anything. We want to maximize the matching, because maximize the matching will show whether students have a good practice in referencing or not, and also for the bibliographic that are not matched, potentially it is the content generated by Gen AI, and we can start a further investigation from there. So if you see that the submission link have been excluded the material here, you can have a conversation with the course coordinator and share with them that we recommend uncheck these boxes. And as long as you do not click on the submit button, you will be fine. That means you do not change anything. After that, you can go back to the assignment inbox and do your marking as usual. And I will click on one sample submission that I did this morning. So this morning, this one is a letter that I composed. So the similarity report is 0. And let's see, this is the film analysis. I grabbed it from, I create the submission myself. So let's open that one. So when you open the similarity, the paper, it will open in a window down here, as you can see. And then I can click on the similarity report and I can see where are the sources. So the first source here is the, I use wiki, yes, correct. And the second one here, this one, I use that from another source, and it doesn't show here. And for the AI, it is 0 detections here. So let me go back to my submission and open another document here. And this document has a higher percentage of matching it from different sources here. So in case that you want to exclude, for example, you know that some of the referencing material are correct. For example, this one, you can select to exclude the matching if you want to decrease the percentage of matching. So first you click on the source, and after that you go down to the bottom of the screen here, you see exclude sources. Check that, and then you can select all the sources that you want to exclude. And after that, the percentage of matching might go down. But yeah, this one doesn't go down because it, let me try that one again one more time. Let's see, exclude the sources here. Yeah, so it still have a lot of matching because essentially when I prepare this submission, I simply copy that from different sources here. So the matching is quite high. And in terms of the AI here, it has no AI content because we didn't use any AI content in these submissions. But in case you need to view the AI content, you can click on that AI indicators and it will open in a new browsers on the top here for you to view. And you can view both the AI score on the browser here, or you can go down to the bottom of the screen and look at the similarity report at the bottom of the screen here. And then you can switch back and forth between the AI and the similarity score when you mark a student paper. So a very brief note about interpreting the similarity report. You should not be afraid of the high number of the matching. As I have explained, it depends on the nature of the assignment. If it is a literature review, we should expect that the matching can be higher than 30%. But if the student have a good practice of acknowledging the sources here, do paraphrase and also acknowledge the source, and all the sources are matched by Turnitin, then it should be a good assignment. And we do not base on the reading of the percentage here to penalize the student. Otherwise, if the student do not use any sources in their writing, it should be a concern submission. And as you can see, the top part is purely the copy and paste, and we do not want that kind of submissions or that kind of practice in student submission. And I have mentioned about the writing indicators in my shows. So do you have any questions at this point? I can see there's a few chatting here.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I just noticed the example that you showed us. The AI is 0 and the similarity rate, however, is 61, for example. And I've come across this kind of example as well. So the similarity is high and the AI is 0, or the AI is 92 and the similarity is very low. So in this case, can you say the similarity means the copy from the reference, and the AI and the similarity rate, they exclude each other? Does it mean that the AI's generated thing may not trigger any similarity rate, or the AI just generated things that they doesn't use any reference?
Thank you for your question. So in this case, we should interpret them separately first. So in terms of the similarity report here, essentially, this one is high because I've used the copy informations from different sources into the submissions, and the part that is not matched, probably that is from the latest new, where from yesterday, for example, so the data is not matched. That is one thing about the similarity. And then for the AI, in case that they do not use any AI content, then the AI reading is 0. However, we have known that the student.
But I know that AI is that the big data. I mean, what confuses me is that how come all these kind of online references already online should be part of the big data, but then if the similarity rate is high, the AI rate should also be high. How come the AI rate is 0?
Okay. The AI can be 0 because these days students can use another. So they use one Gen AI tool to create the topic, to create the text, and then they use another AI tool to paraphrase the AI generated text. And once they use the second source and they post it in here, it can cheat, it can break down the AI tool in Turnitin. So the AI 0 can be suspicious. However, we do not know that for sure. But the good news is that Turnitin is upgrading their AI tool. So their AI tool will be able to first detecting the original AI generated text, and they can detect the paraphrase content from a second AI tool. So we are still waiting for the update, but we know for sure that it is coming out in the second semester, and we will be communicating and also providing the workshop on how to use the AI indication tool in Turnitin.
There will be a workshop.
There will be, yes, yeah.
Okay.
There will be workshop, and also we do the guides, and we communicate about the changes, the update of the tool as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So that is essentially what I wanted to communicate with you today about the Turnitin submissions, how you can read the similarity report, interpret that, and how you can exclude the sources to bring down the matching. But overall, when you read the assignment, the student provide a clear argument and they have good referencing, then the high number of similarity report is not a concern at all. But if you have the time and you look at the reference list, if all the reference lists are matched, that is a very good sign. If the reference lists are not matched, then it would be a good idea if you can check the sources from UQ library, for example, if it is the true one or if the reference are generated by AI. So mostly, let me go back to my screen here and I will show you what the reference list, a good reference list look like. So if the student have both in-text citation and the reference list have the peer review papers or the textbooks that you recommend in the reading list, sometimes the reference are true, correct, but you never mentioned that before. Perhaps the student do their own research, but if it is very real, very rare one of a different topic, then might be generative AI help them to create those references. And generative AI now can generate real references, but it might be the whole book, where usually the students should sign the chapter rather than the whole edited book in their submissions, for example. Nevertheless, we do not expect that the tutors have to go through all the reference list and checking, because it will using their own time. So for that, you might need to have a conversations with the course coordinator of how much work you should spend on marking the student's paper. So I think that is my part, and I will need to leave the these sessions because I have another meeting that I need to attend, and I will leave you with Peter to complete the rest of the presentation. So good luck, everyone, and thank you, Peter. Awesome.
Lovely. Can everybody see that now?
Yes, I think so.
Yep. Excellent. All right, so we're just briefly going to look at marker responsibilities in the time that we've got left, and where students might go for, where you might be able to direct them for support. As I was speaking about before, your role is just to flag any suspicions that you might have. If you are suspicious and you pass that on to the course coordinator, then it's their role to validate any of those suspicions. If they get sufficient evidence, they're the ones that go and look for additional evidence. And if they find that, then they'll pass it on to the integrity officer. And then the integrity officer decides whether or not they can make a case of it. And if they can make a case of it, then they'll work with a student and prepare a report and complete an investigation. So the student would be advised that a case had been opened for them, and they're given all sorts of opportunities to respond as well. Just to give you a bit of an idea, you know, I know I talked about contract cheating and the use of AI and file sharing, but I'll just give you an idea of some of the figures. Like the most recent figures I've got is for 2022. The ones for 2023 are still in the works and they should be available soon. But there were something like 1,500 penalties given out during that year for students who had been investigated and found to have been guilty. But when you look at contract cheating and file sharing, they're down low. The biggest thing is still plagiarism. So out of those 855, out of that 1,500, there were 855 cases of plagiarism. Cheating was up there at 168, and collusion was 378. So they're still our biggest issues. And when you come across a thing like an example of contract cheating, it's much more difficult for the course coordinator and the integrity officer to prove, and sometimes a lower case such as plagiarism will take its place. But also, those investigations continue after the academic year is completed. So whilst we might have these figures for 2022, some of those investigations may have continued into the following year. Okay, so when you're marking, these are the sort of things that we've identified for contract cheating that you should be looking for. The key one of which is this feel. Like, you as an expert in your discipline and your course coordinator should have a bit of a feel about what the expectations you might have for your student and the work that they produce, particularly for you, because as a teacher in a smaller class, you'll know the students a whole lot better. If you've got a lecturer that's got 1,000 students, there's a very good chance that they don't know their students particularly well, and you're more of a face of the course for many students. So this gut instinct, this feeling whether or not it's something that the student is capable of doing or it sounds like their voice, that's probably the most important thing that you can go by to arouse those suspicions. There's other things like the formatting, because when contract cheating is done, it's paid for by the page. The formatting on the page might be in such a way that it's going to increase the value of the paper. So instead of, if you've asked for 1.5 line spacing, it might be done out to 3. There might be extra pages in there. So just look for things that don't look like you would expect. References, you might like to check if they're actually legitimate references and whether they're references that have been used in the course or alluded to in the course, or are the sort of thing that you'd expect your students to find. So if it's not from a lot of lecturers will hand out readings that they recommend, and you'd expect that the students' work would focus around those as well. Technological signals, that's for the course coordinators. That marker instinct, that's a lot for that feel, just that gut instinct whether or not they've done it. And properties, there's ways of investigating, but it won't come down to you. That would be the course coordinator's responsibility. And what they might do is do a property search on the document to find out where it was created, whether it was done with a, American spelling or Australian spelling. And there's things within the properties that they can investigate. If you want to find out more about any of those, the resources are up on the Italy site, because your staff now, you have access through a login to get any of our resources that might be useful to you. And basically anything else you've heard about today, they're available online if you want to investigate further. And in this instance, you'd go to Italy, assessment, and then academic integrity. Having said that, there's legitimate support out there for students. So if you know students are struggling, it's best to be proactive and direct them to help. They'll come to you as probably one of their closest contacts for the course more often than not, but you can also direct them elsewhere. So Student Services offers support, the library offers support. As I said before, students who need extra support that might need a SAP, Student Access Plan, can be directed to student advisors. And also there's a new neurodivergent hub, which has only just been recently introduced to the university, and they can provide support as well.